Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second in this series of Cooking the Sephardic Basics. And we're very honored to have Jeanne Maimon as our demonstrator chef extraordinaire, who is going to be helping us with spinach and cheese filas. And without further ado, I'm going to put you on to Jeanne. Thank you, Jeanne.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Sephardic Home's Sephardic cooking classes. We're going to have some fun today. This morning, we're going to be working with filas dough, and I know some of you have worked with it and some of you have not worked with it. So I have a few things to tell you about it that I sort of made a little note. There are many ways to use filas. This is one simple way of just putting in the layers and putting cheese and oil in the middle. You can also make triangular little, cut the filas into strips and make triangles with cheese or with spinach or with potato or even meat. So you can do a whole lot. And you can also even do like a pie, to put several layers in a pie dish and fill it with meat filling and cover it up and bake it. You can be as creative as you wish. And somebody said they're making pizza. You can do anything you want to do. There are many brands of filas dough, and we call it filas, but some people call it phyllo, and some people call it, I don't know what, but I know of about 5 brands. And as far as the ones I've seen have all have a hechsher on it, but I have no idea how many are out there. So, and in each package, they differ. Some of them have 20 sheets, some have 40 sheets. You have to pay attention to the size of the sheet and the number of sheets in the package so that you'll have enough for whatever size pan it is you're using. It's sold frozen. And many stores have it in their freezer section, and you need to have it thawed out. When you open the package, you need to spread out the filas, flat, and then very carefully look at it. Sometimes the layers stick together. Just sort of very gently pick it up, and see what's happening there. And if the sheet of filas gets messed up, it's very, very easy to work with. You can put several broken pieces on a layer and make a layer, so you don't really have to waste it. And if you're cutting it and you have like strips on the end, you can make a layer of filas with strips if you want. It's whatever you think, will do for you. Now, about the cheese. Number one, I use very fine, I dry my own cheeses, and then I grate them pretty finely. So they're easy to sort of sprinkle on. I have never used shredded cheese. I'm sure that you can use that. Just sprinkle it very, very lightly, because you're going to have 20 layers with cheese in the middle. So, just go according to what you like. With the cheese, I prefer to use a sharper cheese, or at least partly sharper cheese, because it gives it a very good flavor. Now, obviously, Parmesan is very fine, and you can always use just Parmesan if you wish. I use sometimes Gouda cheese. I use sometimes sharp cheddar. Cheddar is sort of blah by itself, but sharp cheddar is good. Sometimes I use kashkaval. I use goat Gouda from Israel. Any kind of a cheese that you like, you can use, but it should be a little bit sharper. Now, I'm sort of gonna, first of all, turn on your oven to 400 and let it preheat. Now, I'm doing things a little bit out of order today. I'm gonna make a cottage cheese one first, and I've got half the layers in, and I'm gonna mix the cottage cheese with the egg in 1 minute and put the filling in. And then I'm going to be working with you while you're putting the layers in. I'm going to put the top layers in and cut it and put this one in the oven. And then I will go to the spinach one that you, or whichever one it is you're working on. So just sort of pay attention a little bit, and then you can start your own thing. So what you're going to be doing is you have to cut the fila to the size of the inside of your pan. And I'm using two different sizes. I'm using a 7x11 and a 9x13 pan. So you could use a square pan. You could use any pan you want. Just cut the fila to the size of your pan. Okay, now I'm going to, so you have to mix the cottage cheese with an egg, and I'm just going to mix up the egg real quickly. And then mix it with the cottage cheese. I'm putting the cottage cheese in a bowl, and I just use an 8-ounce, I think this is 8 ounce, 16 ounce, excuse me, 16 ounce cottage cheese. And there, and then I'm mixing the egg with it, and just stir it around a little bit, and all right, now I'm taking the cottage cheese and just pouring it on top of the the bottom 10 layers. And then spread it around evenly. And then you're going to cut. Okay, so I've already cut the next 10 layers, so they're the right size. And I'm using, for this particular one, I'm using this, it's called Athens, the phyllo. And this is the first time I had used it once before. The sheets in this box are smaller than the ones that I have used in the past. However, for the 7x11 pan, or if you're using a 9x9 or something, you might be able to use this, but there are only 20 sheets here. There are two packages of 20 sheets. So I've got the cottage cheese in here, and I'm carefully, you see this split, but that's okay. You just put it on top of the cottage cheese. And you take your pastry brush and dip it in oil and just sort of spread the oil along the sheet of fila. Then you take a pinch of cheese, grated cheese, and spread it over. Now, like I said, depending on what the size of your cheese is, you know, you have to use your own imagination to see how, you know, what it is how much you want to put. And some of these sheets are tearing, but they fit right in, so it's not a problem. And you put this on, and a little more cheese. And then, and you can, if you want to start your layering, you can, and I will catch up with you soon. And okay, so I'm just going to do this for a couple minutes, and then we will stick it in the oven. Now, as many of you know, although not all of you, I come from an Ashkenazic family, and my mother didn't make any of this stuff. I don't even know if my father would have eaten it, but hey, it's okay. I learned from many older women in this community how to make a lot of good things. And now I bake pretty much everything that Sephardic people make. We obviously make the things that we like and don't make the things we don't like. but anybody can learn. It's just a matter of how much you want to have it to sort of motivate yourself. All right. Actually,
Jeanne, there's a couple of questions about how many layers of Filas did you put on the bottom there?
I put 10 layers on the bottom with oil and cheese in the middle. And then I put the filling, whatever it is you want.
So the question on the filling is, can you do spinach and cheese together, or does it need to be one or the other?
Well, so the cheese, there's cheese and there's cheese. The filling is cottage cheese. So you can do whatever you want. You can put whatever you want in the middle. But I'm doing it separately. I'm making one is going to be cheese, Filas with cheese, the cottage cheese. And the other one is going to be with spinach. But frankly, you can use anything you want. And, some people want to make some kind of a vegetable thing. Some people want to make, like I said, you can use meat if you want to have meat. Maybe eggplant, you can make Filas with anything. And you can use it in many, many different ways.
Did you grease this pan before putting the sheets in?
I did. It says, yeah, you grease the pan on the bottom, and then you put the Filas on it, and then you grease the Filas, and then sprinkle the cheese, and then put another layer on and do the same thing for 10 layers. Okay, so I'm coming now to the last layer. And let's go see here now. And like I said, you can put as much or as little cheese in the middle. Just remember that you're having 20 layers of cheese. So it adds up. And I do not add salt to anything because the cheeses are quite salty. Okay, so now I'm finishing up this one, and on the top, I want to liberally put the oil on. And 1 minute here. So on the top, 1 second, I'm going to get my Parmesan out. On the top of it, I always put Parmesan because Parmesan is very dry and it doesn't burn. Other cheeses tend to burn on the top. So I always sprinkle the top, whether it's Barecas or Dilemmas or whatever it is. I sprinkle it with the Parmesan cheese. Now, 1 second, I'm just going to rinse my hands a minute. And
Jeanne, a question is, what type of oil are you using?
I use canola oil, but whatever kind of oil you use is fine. I don't think there's any difference. I use canola oil for almost everything, so that's what I use.
And what was the total amount of layers that you made?
20. 10 on the bottom, filling, and 10 on the top. No, the cottage cheese does not go between the layers. The cottage cheese only goes in the filling in the middle. What? What about it?
There are 10 layers on the bottom with cheese.
There are 10 layers on the bottom. Between each layer is hard grated cheese. Then the cottage cheese goes on top of the 10 layers. And then another 10 layers with the Filas and the hard cheese.
Got it.
Okay. Now, I finished this in this pan. And now, before I put it in the oven, I'm going to cut it into pieces. And it's very good. I use a serrated knife because it gives sort of a sawing motion on the dough, and it cuts it easier than a straight blade, I have found. So it all depends on what size you want. I'm going to make this about 12 pieces. So, you can make them tiny pieces, you can make them big pieces. So you just hold the top, sort of put your finger around the end of the knife, holding the dough in place. And make sure when you come to the end of the pan that you're cutting through those layers. Okay, so I'm cutting this. This is a 7 by 11 pan, and I'm making four pieces along the long side, and well, maybe 4 pieces along the short side. So when you're making 4 pieces, obviously it's easiest to cut it in the middle first, and then you can sort of eyeball it and see what sizes you want. So you just have to be very careful with the dough because it can move around. So now I'm cutting this, and you'll see okay. I don't know if you can see, it's cut in pieces. So now I'm going to put it in the oven. And okay, now you bake it for 20 minutes, 10 minutes. And so whenever I make anything, I always turn it in the middle because sometimes your oven doesn't bake evenly. So I put it in for 10 minutes, and then when the bell rings, I turn it around and for the next 10 minutes. Okay.
Jeannie, would you like me to show the baked cheese
Yes,
one?
please. Yes, you can
Okay,
see the baked cheese one
I'm
here.
going to share that now. 1 second.
Don't use thick Fila. Oh, they have it? Okay, so then you
Can you see that?
that's what the thing looks like when it's finished.
Mm-hmm.
So after I bake it and take it out of the oven, I go along the lines again and cut it so that it's really cut all the way through. If you do not cut it first, afterward, when you're going to try and cut it, the Fila is going to break up into pieces. So remember to cut it before you stick it in the oven.
I'm loving watching all the people here baking along with you. I can see your daughter Leah is very busy making it. It's really fun watching. It's very cute.
Well, she does have some experience.
She does. There's a question here
Yeah.
that someone has purchased extra thick phyllo, not realizing there's a different varieties.
Yes,
There's
I'm sorry.
8 layers,
Mhm.
and she wants to know what's the best way to do it with 8 layers. Should she double up?
So how many? She has a total of 8?
Yeah.
Well, so I guess what I would do is use 4 and 4. Unless, I mean, you could make 8 and 8 and make it in a smaller pan. But then again, the heavier. So you might want to not have so many layers of it. I've used that heavy Fila. I have used it to make more of a pie type of a thing. I have some recipe with ground lamb, and it's very tasty. So the thicker Fila is better for that kind of a thing. But listen, it can't be too bad. I mean, the same ingredients. It's just a thick, a heavier dough. All right, so now I'm ready for the spinach one, and I'm going to open this up and cut it. Actually, I'm going to do that right over here. I don't know if you can see me. It's sort of there, but this is the place where So this dough that I'm using here is not the Athens. It's a different kind of dough, different name. And the sheets are bigger than that first one. So when you have the sheet that's not the exact size of your pan, which of course you will never have, you need to cut the sheets to the size of your pan. And this pan, I think, was 7.5 by 11. Now, depending on what size you have and what size you're making, you need to sort of figure out ahead of time how you're going to get your sheets to fit the size of your pan. Sometimes you have to sort of piece it, sometimes you don't. And sometimes you can use one sheet. I mean, don't cut all the way through your sheets for the first cut. because you may be able to sort of make do with other pieces, but that's up to you. And this is going to be 7 by 11.5. And so I'm going to cut this a few sheets right here. Just I have the knife and I'm cutting. You can separate the sheets off if you want, or just cut on the top and hope that you don't go all the way through. Okay, let's see here. So I'm going to have about so. And like I said, you have to be careful because I see that some of these sheets are split. So it's not a big deal if they are split, but you have to handle your dough carefully. Okay? And here is what's going to happen. So I've oiled the bottom of the pan for the spinach. And I guess what you could do before you start, if you have your bowl of spinach, why don't you mix it with egg right then, right now, before you start putting your stuff on. And let's see here. You beat your egg. Now, and then okay. So I have my bowl of spinach here, and I'm going to put the egg in the spinach. And if you want, you can actually put another egg in. It depends how much spinach you have. You know, you have to remember that spinach shrinks an awful lot. So you may think you have a lot of spinach, but you know, by the time it cooks, it's much, the layer is much thinner. And actually I see that I have a lot of spinach here, and I'm going to use another egg. And frankly, if you have, I don't think there's such a thing as too much egg. You can just put, you know, some of it, it'll be more moist, but I don't think that's a problem. Okay, here's the second egg. And then, frankly, I'm a great believer in using hands. So in about a second, I'm going to use my hand here to mix that egg with the spinach, because it's a lot easier than trying to use a spoon. So just mix the spinach with egg. And as I said, I do not put on any salt because spinach is salty and the cheese is salty. So that's this. Okay. So now you see that the spinach is sort of sticking together, which is what you want when you put it in. All right. So the spinach is ready, and I'm going to get ready to do the layers of Filas. I'm just going to wash my hands a minute, and then we're going to go. All right. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, so here we go.
Jeanne, there's a question about fresh or frozen spinach.
I never use frozen spinach. I only use fresh. Frozen spinach, I suppose you could. You know, it's just more dense, but I guess you can use it. You would have to thaw it out, of course, and squeeze out all the water. So you'd probably need, you know, for a 9 by 13 pan, you'd probably need at least two packages of frozen spinach. But, you know, I imagine you could use it. It's not a problem. I mean, frankly, you can do really whatever you want. Just sort of, you know, when you think about it, try and think of what the difference is, you know, from the other thing that was suggested. And you can just go ahead and, you know, now here's a piece of Filas that broke in the middle, but I just put it back together again in the pan. So don't be afraid if your Filas tears, but just move. The main thing is to move very slowly when you're picking up the layers of Filas. And And then if you're finished and you have left over, you can roll it up and put it back in the sack and put it in the refrigerator, and it'll keep, for a certain amount of time. So just try and keep track of the number of layers you have. And try and keep your layers as straight as you can. Okay. I need to get some more layers here. So let's see. Okay, the other one is half done. All right, I just have to cut
Just a couple of questions about using canola spray oil versus canola oil. That's fine.
I don't see any reason not to. I've never used it, but that's, you can do, like I said, I mean, you can improvise here. I don't see any reason why you couldn't use that.
And another improvisation question is using different types of cheese being sprinkled between the layers. Can they use?
You can use anything you want.
So it can be a mixture of cottage and
No, well, the cottage cheese, just a minute. The cottage cheese does not go between the layers. It only goes in the middle, because that's a whole different thing. If you have cottage cheese between all the layers, it's going to be very
it'll become soupy.
mushy.
Yeah.
So the cheese that you're using between the bottom and top layers is dried hard cheese. It's not cottage cheese. The cottage cheese is the filling. So, but like I said, you can try anything you want and see, how it works for you. But don't forget, the cottage cheese is very creamy. So, it's going to be runny. If you're making cottage cheese between the layers, you're going to have sort of a big mush.
Yeah, you don't want mojado. I get you.
So yes, mojado, mojado. And so, you have to sort of think about all that. But, there's, like I said, you can do anything with Filas and cheese. Okay, so now, I forgot to count how many layers I have on the bottom, but whatever. Let's put this on. People make this for Pesach with wet matzah instead of Filas. And obviously you wouldn't be putting 10 layers. But the idea is there, and you can do whatever you like. Okay. If anybody has experience doing something else with it, please speak up. All right. All right. We're going to put one more layer, and then we're going to put the spinach. And as I can't stress enough how important it is to move very slowly while you're separating the layers, because this one is sticking together a little bit, but I'm able to separate it very slowly. All right.
Jeannie, I thought you'd like to know there's 92 people on this Zoom call
Oh, very nice. Well,
and lots
welcome.
more people on Facebook as well.
Welcome. And any questions you have about anything?
There's a question here about, can you do pumpkin here instead as another alternative to spinach?
Okay, so pumpkin, I've never tried pumpkin in a flat pan like this. What I've seen with pumpkin is people make triangles, filicas with pumpkin filling.
But could you do fila de calabaza this way? But you wouldn't recommend it?
Calabaza can be very watery, so I don't know how that would be. I mean, when you make a cuajado with grated zucchini and egg, it's fairly liquidy. So I think that, you know, it might be too much liquid. I mean, you can squeeze out as much as you can, but it's still, listen, you can try it once and see. I mean, I don't know, you know. Yeah. So when I'm talking about filicas, I'm talking about making little triangles, or in the case of potato, you can make potato cigars. You just cut the fila in strips and put a little bit of potato on the end and roll it up. So you cut the fila in strips and then you oil them.
So the more liquidy the thing, the smaller the pastry you're going to use, basically.
Well, that's hard to say because if it's small, you're still going to get liquid. So I don't know that it has anything to do with the size. It has to do with the texture of the filling, I would say. All right, so now, I don't know where you guys are holding. I have put the spinach in on the top of 10 layers of fila with cheese. Now, if you want, you can sprinkle some cheese on the spinach, you know, but like I said, there's cheese all over the place here. So, you know, depends on what your taste is. And don't forget that, you know, hard cheese is very salty. So you're getting a lot of salt, whichever way you're doing it, okay? So now we're putting the cheese on the top layers. And anybody have any suggestions or questions? You know,
Jeannie,
depending
I have a
on
question.
which culture you're coming from.
Jeannie, this is Sharon.
Yes, sure.
I just put mine in the oven, so I'm anxiously awaiting it.
Uh-huh.
Back in the day, many years ago, I remember doing this very similarly, but then I took beaten egg and poured it over the top after I cut the squares.
Yes.
And the egg kind of got in between all the squares, and it made it a little bit more
Binding.
yeah. Have you ever
That's
done
right.
that?
Yeah, I've never done that. I don't think I've done that. I mean, I do put egg. If I'm making this spinach thing with borracha dough, which I sometimes do, just roll it out and put it in a big pan.
Mm-hmm.
And I put egg on the top because that dough is a borracha dough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever put egg on fila, but like I said, you can put anything you want, anywhere you want to put it.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I haven't
wanna
done it.
try it,
I
that's
haven't done
fine.
it.
Yeah, I'm going to use these little pieces of dough up here that I had left from when I cut to sort of fill in. And like I said, if you have a bunch of pieces, you could just put them together, you know, just lay them side by side on the pan, and you can make a layer that way, and that way you're not wasting any of your fila. And let's see here.
Jeannie, while you're finishing off, can you tell us a little bit more about learning from your mother-in-law and learning from the other ladies in the community, what that was like?
Okay, so needless to say, my mother didn't make any of this. I had never seen any of this until I came to Seattle. But the people in Seattle many of them, made their stuff, all of them actually made their stuff at home, because if you didn't make it, you couldn't eat it. And my mother-in-law taught me how to make panizicos, and she taught me how to make borrecas, and she never made bulemas. I learned to make bulemas in the synagogue many, many years ago with when we had the bazaar. But in those years, only the older ladies could actually make anything. The rest of the people were like, doing the busy work. So Rosie and Becky and I used to be in the kitchen grating cheese all the time and chopping spinach. We were not allowed to touch any dough with anything, but you could see how people did things. And I remember Mrs. Baruch, Olam Shalom, she was quite the taskmaster mistress. And she would go around and tell everybody, this is not good, you have to be a little more careful. And this doesn't look so good, you better fix it up. So we had sort of quality control. And they used to make, many people make bulemas with a circular pattern. Instead of like we make them today, it's a little different. So, excuse me 1 second. Let's see how we do it here. Okay. All right, 1 second, I'm going to show you. This is finished. So you'll be able to see what it looks like. 1 minute, let me see if I can get it way up close here. Can you see this?
Oh, looks great. I think I've got to come over to get a piece.
Yeah, you're welcome to come. So this is all finished, and I'm going to put it over here, and it'll cool off. I'm going to, actually, I put it in the other part of the kitchen. I want to, I'm taking my serrated knife, and just 1 second, I'm going to go off the screen because I can't have it here right in front of me. Or maybe I can, actually. 1 second. Let me see here. 1 second.
Where are you? Where are you going to be?
Right
Over
here,
there.
right here.
Okay. Let me move.
No, I'm just going to do this. 1 second. I'm going to put this here, and then maybe you can see me recutting it. Okay. Well, I can't take it off of here. I can't, it's hot. I have it right here on top of my stove because it's very hot. And I'm just taking the knife, and what are you doing?
I messed things up.
Oh, thanks, Al. Okay, and I'm going over the lines that I cut before. And that way, when it cools off, it'll be really separate. Because when you try and cut fila that's baked, it's very, okay. So yeah. Now, 1 second, I'm going to finish up here with the spinach. Anyway, so when it was bazaar times, excuse me for interrupting myself, we used to go and watch the ladies bake all kinds of things. When I first came to town, I came to Seattle in 1965. We did not have a social hall yet. And we had this little kitchen in the fellowship room. You wouldn't believe how small it was. And that's where we used to bake everything. And we didn't have any commercial ovens. We had an oven like this, sort of. And the ladies used to make their own fila. They used to make the fila and then cut it to whatever, they would stretch it out on big tables and then cut it to the size of whatever it is they were making. They used to make baklava, and they made their own fila. So, when commercial fila became available, that was an amazing thing. And made, I don't know if you, I make fila dough for for bulemas, but I have never made it for dry things because it has to dry and then you have to cut it into correct pieces. And it's quite a job, you know, when it's dry, you know, it crumbles. So you have to be careful, but nowadays we're very lucky. All right, so I got to the top of my 10 layers on the top, and I'm sprinkling Parmesan on the top. And now I'm going to cut it. Now, I think what I will do is cut the long way first. And probably in 4 pieces. So I'm going to cut down the center, holding the dough around the blade so that it doesn't move around. And I'm going to make 4 pieces, 4 rows. That'll be 3 cuts. And all right, and then this way, I think I'll make 6. So those pieces should be big enough. Right here. Okay.
Jeanne, if someone's making a meat fila, what would they put in between the
Yes, I meant to say that. The breadcrumbs, dried bread, fine breadcrumbs instead of cheese. That will keep the layers a little separate. And I suppose, you know, you could flavor them if you want, you know, that would be a place where maybe you could put a little flavor. Depends what, you know, how much flavoring you have in your meat. But if you sprinkle breadcrumbs, I think mozzarella is not great, but I suppose that in a pinch you could do that. I can't think of anything else that you would be able to sprinkle in there like that. Just making sure that the ends are cut. And then put it in the oven. Here we go. It's all cut, and we're putting it in the oven. So, like I said, I'll do 10 minutes on each side. And that takes care of that. Now, let me think here what I can tell you about, you can make, you know, pastel filling. Pastels are little meat pies. And there are some people who make them in the shape of a little, like a cup, and put a lid on top. But I don't do it that way. I make it in the shape of a hamantash because it's much easier to do. But, you know, you can do that with meat filling. You can also do that with the fila dough, as well as, you know, make the triangles, as well as putting it in layers. I'm trying to think what else you can do with fila. There, you know, obviously you can make baklava if you have nothing else to do. I don't know what else that I can tell. Okay, so getting back to the ladies in the bazaar, the ladies in the congregation worked very, very hard. And they all came together, and the bazaar was a very big, big yearly thing. And we had it in a rented hall because we didn't have a hall in those early years. And they used to sell everything. In addition to the homemade stuff, they had booths and everything, and it was a whole day affair. People used to come and spend the day, and they had people sewed things, and people, of course, the main thing was knitting. People used to knit a lot in those days, and they had little booties, and they had dresses for little girls and baby blankets, and you name it. They had beautiful hand knitted things there, and they also served a meal there, and they had a little bit of gambling in the back room, and it was quite an event, you know. But we have not had that in recent years. So this stuff, yeah, my husband asked me, does it freeze well? It does freeze well. You can I usually take it out of the pan piece by piece and put it in a container. That way, when you want to have it, you can just take out a few pieces. But you probably also can just freeze it in the pan and take the whole pan out. And on Shabbat, you know, I put it on the blech and heat it up. You know, I thaw it out, and then, you know, I put it on the blech, and it just gets warm. So there's, you know, it's easy to save it, you know, or you can just take a piece out and eat it, you know, whatever works for you.
So we're getting a few more questions about meat filas, and I just want to let everyone know in 2 weeks, Rena Ben-Olio is going to be making meat fila. So let's keep those questions because Rena will be able to answer some of those too. All right.
Right. And like I said, we call those filikas as opposed to the flat stuff, you know. And
hopefully she'll touch on pastels as well with that class. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I don't know, you know, I don't know what kind of dough she's going to use, but whatever it is. Once again, you can do anything you want to do. You can be very creative between regular doughs and fila.
Yeah, she's going to be doing fila, and she's going to be doing the triangles.
Okay.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, but you know, with the regular dough, you know, if you know how to make hamantaschen, you know, you just take a little circle of dough and put some meat in the middle and close it up. So, you know, you can do whatever you like.
What do you do with the unused dough? I know a lot of Sephardic chefs, when they have the leftovers, they make things out of them. What do you do with your leftovers?
The leftover fila, well, I have some left over here, and I'm going to put it back in the little plastic tube that it came in. And I'll put it in the refrigerator, and then during the week, you know, it just depends on what's around. And, you know, I can use it for a lot of different things. So, you know, you can once again, you can cut it in strips and make little filikas. You can roll it up, you know, like a big jelly roll kind of a thing, and slice it. You know, if you're going to do that, it's easier to slice if it's firm. So you could probably roll it up and stick it in the freezer for maybe a half an hour or an hour till it gets sort of frozen. And then it's a lot easier to cut the pieces, you know, sharper, and then lay them down like pinwheels. So, you know, it's all in what what your mind brings to you as to what you can do. You know, you can try anything once.
Do you have any advice for keeping the fila moist?
Yeah, you have to roll it. So the fila comes, I told, in a bag in the box. So it's in this bag, and then when you take it out of the bag, it's rolled up in a paper. So when you're using fila, you need to keep it covered because it dries out very quickly. So you should keep it when you're making your layers. If you have your stack of stuff here that you're using, the other part of it should be covered up either with a towel or with wax paper. And then when you have the leftover, you're going to roll it up in the paper that it came in and stick it back in this bag and in the box. And I put it in the refrigerator, and it'll keep for some time. It's, you know, I don't usually refreeze it, but, you know, if it's in the refrigerator, then I know it's there and I can do, you know, whatever I think about making, you know. And like I said, you can be creative. You can use it as a, I suppose if you wanted to make like a quiche, you could put the pie dough, I mean the fila dough in your pan and put the quiche in and bake it that way. And it would be very tasty. What other things can I tell you? I don't know.
I think that's about it. I think we're close to wrapping up. What would you like to add?
Right. Now you can also show them the picture of the finished spinach, please.
Oh, 1 second. Let me just bring that up. Yeah. Hold on. That's a good one. Yeah, I can do that. How about that? Do you get that?
There it is.
That's what it looks like, guys.
That's what it looks like. That's after it's recut, you know, after it comes out. Sharon, do you have yours handy? Can you show us what it looks like? Sharon Babani? She's not on. Okay. She said she took hers out of the oven. So this is going to be baking yet for another 10 minutes.
Leah says she got 9 triangle filas with her leftover fila.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
And you can put, you know, in the triangles, you cook a potato and, you know, fix up like a burrata filling. You can do triangles or you can do cigars. Cigars are about as easy as anything that you'd ever make. And that's something also, your little children can help you do that. That's a fun thing. And my grandson, who's 18, he likes to bake. So in the past 3 weeks, we have made spinach bollos. We have made pastels with regular dough. We have made borracas. We have made layered fila. And what else? I'm trying to think. Oh, pinwheels. You can also use puff pastry and make like a pinwheel thing. You know, cut your spinach fairly small when you're doing pinwheels and mix it with an egg. So if you open your puff pastry dough, you could do the same thing. You know, put a strip over here and then just start rolling it up. And that also can be put in the freezer for a short while to become firm, so that it's easier. You know, your pinwheels look a little bit neater. But even if they're not so neat, they taste the same. They're very good. We use a lot of spinach in our family. I have to tell you a little anecdote about one of my granddaughters. When Dahlia was 5 years old, somebody took her to Starbucks or whatever the other place was to get her a mocha. And when she came home, her mother said, "How was it, Dahlia?" And Dahlia said, "It was as good as spinach, Ema." So Sephardic kids, at least in this community, eat a lot of spinach. So, you know, depending on where you come from, different customs. So I don't know if there's any more questions.
All we have is a lot of messages saying thank you and how pleased they are to have been here with you. What a great job you've done. And they can't wait to try it and do it. You've done amazing.
Thank you.
I'm going to unmute everyone so everyone can share, okay?
Sorry.
Not as good
Hey,
as
everybody.
the other ones weren't great either.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
About 3 of them, I think, is
Thank
like
you. This was great.
Left already?
It was nice to see all of you, but I do
From New York.
We're ready for another bazaar.
You want to be the chairman?
Jeannie, is that done? Jeannie, you volunteering? I'm going to re-mute everyone because it's too loud. Jeannie, can you unmute yourself? Jeannie, while you're muted, I just heard you say you're volunteering to be the chairwoman for the bazaar. That's the best thing I've heard so far.
So where will this be available, on Facebook or YouTube?
This will be a YouTube video which we're going to be sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If anybody has any
You say you'll be the chairwoman
questions,
for the bazaar. That's great.
if anybody has any questions for me or about anything, please feel free to contact me. Should I give them my email?
Auntie Jeannie, when is the bazaar starting?
Whenever you're going to be the chairman.
Well, I'm going to push you. I'm a cheerleader.
The bazaar is an extraordinary amount of work and dedication. And in the past, we have been amazingly lucky to have all the people who worked on it. But unfortunately, it's much more difficult to do. And who knows, Hawaii, maybe sometime we'll have another bazaar.
I think
Yeah.
Jeannie, Benji's in the kitchen washing spinach right now.
Yeah.
Bring him over.
Right.
Hot.
The spinach, you can use any kind of spinach. I was telling you, when we used to have the bazaar work in the fellowship room, in those days, there was no pre-washed spinach. We got the little bunches of spinach that were full of mud, and we would wash them 3 times, and then the sink would get clogged with dirt. And it was just an amazing thing. But that was a very big job. Wash the spinach and dry it and cut it up. So today it's much easier. You can buy packaged spinach, and even if you're washing it, it's much easier because you don't have all the mud. So some things have changed for the better, some things not. But good luck to everybody.
Jeannie, thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome, everybody. And it's been a pleasure. And it's going to be another few minutes before the spinach is done. I didn't give them my email.
if ours doesn't come out so good, so we're coming to your door.
Thank you. All right.